Since her release in Season 6, it's become clear that Rampart hasn't struck a chord with the people who play Apex. I've played her quite a bit, and I think that she does actually have a significant niche and a huge range of uses for her abilities, but still, she underperforms. Whether or not she has a big power spike when you really learn her, it's not great to have a character that very few people are intrinsically engaged by. For most people, it's almost impossible to hit the power fantasy of Rampart. So then, what is that power fantasy? And how could Rampart be changed to fit it better? An easy place to start is the character select screen. Rampart's role is the base of fire. She's a defensive legend and she has neither low profile or fortified. Rampart is the base of your team. She's someone who your composition builds around and on top of, and the way she does this is by bringing and supporting overwhelming fire support. She has more bullets and she can replenish them faster, and her ultimate is an infinite ammo minigun with the most damage per second in the entire game. Her walls help keep a buffer between you and your enemy and amplify the threat of your bullets to make sure they stay scared and stay put. Now, how does this affect what can be changed about Rampart? Well, I focused on three main things when considering changes to Rampart: viability and relevance to the game and its meta, consistency with her existing identity and that power fantasy, and ease of implementation. I'm proposing the sort of thing that could be presented as solid changes in patch notes, not a huge rework of existing core mechanics. Still, I'm not a Respawn employee. I don't know their systems, and these could be more complicated than I'm aware. I'm trying to keep it transformative, but still straightforward. As well as that, it's key to make sure I'm not proposing something that makes Rampart not Rampart. Faster deploying walls would absolutely make Rampart better, but it would also make her less of a slow, sturdy base to build off of and more of a reactive legend like Gibraltar. A defensive legend can work in Apex Legends. Movement is absolutely core to the game's current meta, and I believe that that means suppression of movement can also be key. So, let's take a look at the parts of Rampart that could change from left to right. First, I think her passive is in line with other passives in the game. It's very beneficial if you play with it in mind, and it directly supports another piece of her kit. I don't think it needs changing at this time, and changing it would likely have to be replacing it, which doesn't fit under my criteria. Buffing the numbers on her passive makes adding more LMGs to the game harder because balancing them for both their normal and Rampart buffed versions can create problems where one is too powerful or too weak. Next are Rampart's walls. They're very difficult to assess because they're so complicated to use, but I think they've already been pushed very hard in their raw numbers. They have 575 health total, split between 175 on the top and 400 on the bottom. They are resistant to grenades, and they have a pretty sprightly 20-second cooldown. Their main problem right now is a lack of accessibility. It's hard for new players to learn how to use them, and they're her sole source of power in most situations. If you don't know how to use them, it becomes problematic almost immediately, which discourages new people from learning how to play Rampart. Having a powerful and easier to use other ability could help bridge that gap, giving new Rampart players a good reason to try her in spite of their initial unfamiliarity with her walls.
Nice.
Finally, there's Rampart's ultimate. You've likely guessed that this is the focus of the changes I'd like to pitch. It's an extraordinarily powerful gun. 280 DPS without an amped wall, and a 173 round mag for Rampart that lasts for about 8 seconds of continuous fire. It's accurate to roughly 200 meters, but it's hard to use on distant targets because of the visual effects from amped cover and its slightly bouncy recoil. This is where Rampart really should hit that fantasy as the base of fire, but she doesn't. Why? Cause Sheila costs too much. You have to wait 2 minutes between Sheilas. You can't move while using her, and you can't move during her whopping 7-second reload. She only gets accurate after at least a full second of firing, meaning that you either have to spend your whole magazine at once, or waste some bullets winding her up. She's got a laser that tells enemies if you're looking at them, and she takes multiple seconds to go from ultimate charged to firing. Are these problems? Yeah, but a lot of them are entirely on purpose. Like I said, Sheila's a powerful gun. 280 DPS would be super unpleasant if it could turn corners, jump, or fire without any warning. I think that's fine. Heck, the whole point of Sheila is that she has a ton of warning. Suppressing targets is the idea of using ammo to make a certain path dangerous. You fire a gun at the corner they're hiding behind, so if they ever step out, they know they're instantly dead. In Apex, that usually doesn't work because individual bullets don't carry a huge threat and most mag sizes are 30 or less. In practice, Sheila is actually magnificent at doing this where no other gun really is. If you have a solid position on an enemy, Sheila can turn it into a dominant one. Just the laser pointed at them is a threat. Unfortunately, it's very conditional. Rampart needs a solid position, enemies in range, her ult charged, and the enemies to be in a position without a safe backdoor. Some of those needs can be removed, I think. And which one do I want to remove? The cooldown. Okay, how would that work? Right now, there's a function to refund Sheila. It gives you 50% ult back, but only if she's never been fired and has never been shot. In short, it's almost completely useless. I propose that we make a slight change to this ability with wide-reaching implications. Let Rampart refund it even if it's been used or damaged, and make it return 100% of her ult. I think this is greatly impactful, and hopefully easy to implement because it's a numerical change in the process of removing existing rules. What would this mechanic encourage? Well, now, Sheila really is Rampart's best friend. You see a Rampart, you know they might slap down a gunner nest at any time if you don't pressure them. Newer Ramparts get to play with the huge flashy tool more often, and it becomes more forgiving. Do the slats on the window block your line of sight? That's okay, pick her up and replace her. Did the enemies get away from that spot way faster than you expected? Pack it up and find a better one. Not only does this facilitate more experimentation and make Sheila available more often, it's also inherently self-correcting. Now, her ultimate cooldown is a grace period at the beginning of a match, and also the time you have to leave one Sheila in place before you can get two. Some immediate questions about this might be, does that mean you can just pick up and put down your Sheila to reload faster? This is where the most complicated part of the implementation would have to come in. I think the best solution is to track the amount of ammo in Sheila when she's picked up, and slowly replenish it in Rampart's hands. Just a little number indicator on the ultimate icon that scales up at some rate with specifics ironed out later. Let's say 10 ammo per second for the sake of argument. This provides a short cooldown before redeploying an emptied Sheila without forcing an awkward situation where you put it down somewhere else, hop on, reload, hop off, and pick her up. Maybe it could be applied to Sheilas nobody's using as well, so that teammates could benefit from the same technique without requiring babysitting from Rampart. It would be a safer, maybe 17-second reload as opposed to 7, without exposing yourself, but at the cost of a lot of time. Right now, Rampart is somewhat linear. Her walls are incredible and versatile, but they're only one piece of her kit. Her central fantasy tool is often inaccessible or low value even when it is relevant. Would I like other changes? Absolutely. The tracer effects are so damn cool to look at, and so unhelpful when you're trying to aim at something. I also think that getting on Sheila could be made faster without compromising the nature of Rampart. You're already sacrificing so much just to use her. But those probably need some pretty specific funky animation work, and they might not actually be balanced. I'm not certain, as I can't test this myself. I just think it would be okay if Sheila was available whenever you could get just a little bit of value out of it. It's Rampart's best friend, after all, and I think it should be the best friend of Rampart players as well.